Chapter 32, Forensic Psychiatric Nursing. So I just like this chapter, you guys. It's really, really interesting. You should definitely take some time to just kind of go through and look at the outline of it because you can get some really cool information about jobs that nurses can do in forensic nursing. So anyway, I just have outlined it here for you. So a couple things from here. Be sure to look at page 599, box 32-1. That's got the healthy goals to for people, or the Healthy People 2020 goals, injury and violence prevention. So two facts: crimes account for more deaths, injuries, and loss of property than all natural disasters combined. Approximately 13 million people are victims of crime each year. So that 1.5 million of those crimes are violent. And violence is part of the goal for Healthy People 2020 to prevent injury and violence in the U.S. So forensic nursing. So forensic nurses can do some of the following things. Provide direct services to crime victims and perpetrators of crimes. Consultation services to colleagues and nurses, medical and law-related agencies. Expert court testimony. Offer input on policy changes in the corrections setting, and offer evaluation services for inmates. There's also forensic nurse generalist and advanced practice forensic nurse. And again, you can read about those right in your book. The International Association of Forensic Nurses, formed in 1992 by nurses who are mostly sane nurses. So SANEs, that we kind of briefly touched on that in class, are sexual assault nurse examiners. And typically they work in ERs, or are called in. They're specialists. So they come in and they do the collection of evidence from patients that are raped. So 5 roles of the forensic nurse: identification of the victims, creation of appropriate treatment plans, collection, documentation, and preservation of potential evidence. A forensic nurse generalist is a nurse with an ADN or BSN who acquires additional knowledge and skills by completing a certificate program that compromises continuing education in an area of forensics. Also can obtain a minor in legal topics. So you'll actually see that there will be job postings for nurse in like attorneys' offices. So nursing does not mean you're going to be in a hospital if you have a interest elsewhere. So SANE nurses, this was the first specialized forensic role for nurses, represents the largest subspecialty in forensic nursing. So this is the biggest one for forensic nurses. SANE training courses typically 5 days. It's 40 contact hours. They work with both adult and pediatric victims. So, this is an area that some people are very interested in quite often. But it's good to have a good self-awareness that you would have to work with both adult victims and pediatric victims, so having a good self-assessment and how that's going to be for you. And again, your book does a really nice job outlining each one of these, so I do encourage you to go through all of them. Nurse coroner or death investigator, so public official charged with the duty to determine how and why people die, assessing the deceased through understanding the evidence, discovery of evidence, preservation of evidence, and use of evidence. So the potential for a nurse to work in a coroner's office, which some people think is really cool as well. Forensic psychiatric nurse. This nurse is going to collect evidence central to this role, work as a competency evaluator, provide assessment data that can help make final diagnosis. Then again, we wouldn't be the one doing the diagnosing, but we can do assessment data that's going to assist in finding the diagnosis for the patient. Requires skills in psychiatric mental health nursing, assessment, evaluation, and treatment of victims or perpetrators, and competency of medical and psychiatric nursing, as well as the criminal justice system. So, you'll notice on each of these, on many of these, that it says the perpetrators as well, because remember, many people that, I shouldn't say many. That's a bad word. Perpetrators can also have some kind of mental illness going on. And I'm not saying that takes away from the crime they've committed, but they're still a human being and they still potentially have this, mental illness that needs to be treated. So we work with both victims and perpetrators. So roles and functions of the forensic psychiatric nurse. So if you look over here on the right, the role of this nurse is to not determine guilt or innocence, but to provide assessment data that can help make a final diagnosis with a multidisciplinary team. So that when a nurse, it's kind of like when we've been talking about suspected abuse. We have a duty to report suspected abuse, but we don't have a duty to determine if the person is guilty or innocent. So same thing with forensic psychiatric nurses, depending on the role that they're in, it's not for them to determine if the person that they're trying to help is guilty or not guilty. It's up to them to determine, or is to help make or collect data and make an assessment to help with a final diagnosis. So the different areas in your book outlines these as nurse psychotherapist, forensic nurse examiner, competency evaluator, fact and expert witness, consultant, hostage negotiator, and criminal profiler. And I'll tell you, I don't share this with a ton of people, and now I guess I'm sharing it with all of you. I would really like to someday do something with hostage negotiation. I think that that would be really, really cool to do, and I'm very interested in it, but there's just not jobs for that. There's not a lot of opportunity for that at all, but I really think it would be awesome. Um, so some terms that you need to know, legal sanity, so able to distinguish, are they able to distinguish from right or wrong? Legal insanity, the presence of a major mental disorder, typically something that causes psychosis, hallucinations such as schizophrenia. Defendant has the option to use this defense, but does not have to. McNaughton rules, I want you guys to read McNaughton rules and be able to answer for me what that is when we come to class. And then irresistible impulse, if they knew the act was wrong but could not control their behavior. Guilty but mentally ill, this will receive treatment in a correctional, this person will receive treatment in correctional facility. And then competence to proceed. This is the defendant's present thinking at the time of trial. So they have to be deemed competent to stand trial. You've probably heard that either in TV shows or other places in order for us to actually take them through the trial process. So correctional nursing, this is obviously working in a jail or a prison. Significant part of the job is providing treatment and services for inmates with chronic mental health diagnosis, but other things too. I mean, it's going to be a lot of med passing as well. Correctional nursing does not qualify a nurse as a forensic nurse. Advanced practice or education qualifies. So 1 in 3 in the state and 1 in 4 federally and 1 of 6 in jail inmates have a mental illness. So that's, I mean, look at those numbers that we're putting a lot of people with mental illness into jails. And again, I'm not taking away from the fact that if they committed a crime that they've got to then, have the time that they have to pay for it. But we've got a lot of mental illness inside of our jails. So, all right, that's it for this one. And I'll be on to the next one in a moment.